and welcome to my spoiler review of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. If you want my non-spoiler review, you can click here or the link in the video description, and I do recommend going into this movie fresh. I had a few things spoiled for me, but really not much, and so I was able to discover a lot while watching the film. And I think that's important here, because not only are there a lot of twists and turns, but there are some great scenes that you don't want to know are coming. Because I think part of the fun is watching this film and going, wow, it can't be this good. It can't get better than this. Oh my God, it just did. So if you know what's coming and you know what scenes to look out for, I think you're going to be robbed of that a little bit. Also, you should see it because of how interconnected these films are becoming. I want to speak to that for a moment before I go into depth on. I'm going to go into all the different characters, individually, and then also Shield and Hydra, and then also those after credit sequences. And if you're on not a mobile device, I don't think annotations work on a mobile device yet, but those are bookmarked via annotations here on the side. So anyway, the interconnectedness of the Marvel movies, they're becoming more and more interwoven. And I think the old Hollywood thought on this would be that's a mistake. You want standalone films. Just as for so long, network television has felt you need standalone episodes. But I think that comic book movies, in particular Marvel, and cable television are proving that is no longer the case. Because when you interconnect films, you really reward people for the investment of their time, and you really widen the scope of the story you can tell. We talk a lot here about television shows having an advantage over movies because it's like a 13-hour movie. But when you think about it, these episodes come out much further apart, but that's really what Marvel is doing. Marvel has created a cinematic universe that is, I guess to some degree you can say just a bunch of episodes of one large story, one greater story. And that's how much Captain America: The Winter Soldier ties in to what's going to happen in the Avengers: Age of Ultron. I mean, you could jump in, I'm sure, as I said in my non-spoiler review, but you're just not going to be getting the same experience, or I think the experience that Marvel Studios is intending you to get. So I think it's a fascinating development, and I would like to add, because it came up yesterday with my review of Lucy, Almost Human, I was really enjoying that show, The Blacklist. These were two shows that had re-energized my faith in network television. But I have to say, after taking a break for the holidays, when all television goes off the air, I lost interest. I did not return because they were episodic and they were standalone episodes. I didn't need to return, and I just felt that I wasn't getting rewarded for my time. So I think that Marvel is really, it's a risky game, but I think it's paying off for them very big, and I expect other studios to take a cue from them in terms of making their movies, all interconnect. Now, I will say also that still, less so than in other films like Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World, I felt that the presence of some Avengers was missing, particularly Tony Stark. He was referenced quite a bit when they showed the targeting system at the end. I'm sure you caught that they said Tony Stark. Also, the Doctor Strange reference, Stephen Strange. Very quick, very fleeting, but clearly I think they are going to go with the supernatural for the Phase 3, especially with Scarlet Witch coming into the picture. We'll talk about her in that after credits sequence portion, but so that was another nod that I thought was very nice and a nice Easter egg for viewers, but not much of an Easter egg. But there was a lot of Tony Stark references also to Bruce Banner, and I think that it would be very nice, and I think it would benefit from the actors themselves because it just strengthens the Marvel cinematic universe to even have them come in just for one quick shot, one quick episode, one quick Skype phone call. And I think that it would be easy for those actors to knock out in like half a day or a day. It would be worth the investment in terms of their time and money that obviously Marvel would need to pay them and to set that all up. I think it would just make this seem even stronger and more cohesive. So perhaps for Phase 3, that's something they can implement. So let's go in starting with the characters. Chris Evans. Some of you had said, hey, why are you saying this isn't Chris Evans' film? And as I said in my non-spoiler review, I really think it's everybody's film. That's why I'm going to go and discuss quite a number of characters here. But as for Chris Evans, he is the linchpin. He does anchor the film. And I think that while he still doesn't have much in the ways of a personality, they kind of made that part of the story, and that he's kind of trying to find out who he is because he's been frozen for most of his life. I thought that they kind of addressed that was good. And also he has such wonderful supporting characters now that his interaction with them is so much fun to watch. And I think that Chris Evans does a very good job playing the straight man, who a good-natured straight man. He's not a stick in the mud, which I think is important to his character. He just seems like a really nice guy, like an old-fashioned nice guy, like a Jimmy Stewart or something, the kind of guy who just does the right thing and, who you want his advice and he doesn't need to have a great personality because he's more of an idea than a person. And I think Chris Evans really captured that. I also thought that his action sequences were phenomenal. He won me over with that opening sequence of him on the ship, taking over that ship from those pirates. So I wish Captain Phillips had him. It's interesting. I talked about in my non-spoiler review how great it was that they had very real-world elements in this film, and this is an example of one of them. So the fight sequences, the choreography was fantastic. He has a little bit of the Black Widow playbook where he's like doing a lot of flipping around and somersaults, but it still seemed very manly, and it didn't seem like dance fighting. We've been teasing Channing Tatum with his dance fighting in the trailer for Jupiter Ascending. This seemed like genuine, real fighting, but modern fighting, taking a lot of modern like MMA moves, parkour, really well done. And the shield, the way Chris Evans used that shield was really impressive. There's a scene in the film where he's trying to escape from S.H.I.E.L.D. and he takes down like one of their jets, their mini jets. And it was totally believable. And not only were you like, Cap is badass, but Cap has an excellent understanding of aerodynamics. He knew how to take that plane down quickly and, with precision, and he was quick about it. And I really was impressed. It showed that Chris Evans was not just a grunt. He wasn't, just a cannon fodder, but showed that soldiers are, very smart and they know what they're doing and they're professionals. It's a job. You send somebody in. You don't just send anyone in. You stick a gun in their hands. Soldiers are professional fighters, and Chris Evans really epitomized that. I thought he was so good in the role, and I'm not sure what was him and what was a stunt person, but it's great that I couldn't tell. I said in my non-spoiler review there was one shot where I could tell it was a CGI stunt person, and that's when Falcon landed Cap on the deck of the helicarrier towards that big final action sequence at the end with the 3 helicarriers. Just for a moment, I was like, CGI Captain America! He just didn't move right. But every other scene, I truly believed that it was, of course, green screen and stuff, but that Chris Evans or his stunt double, but I couldn't tell who was actually doing these moves. But for the first time ever, Captain America to me worked. I got the shield, I got what he has to offer the team, I got his leadership skills, and why it's important to have him around, like the heart that he brings. And I think that a large part, that's the script also, of course, and the special effects team and the stunt choreography, but it's Chris Evans who had to sell that idea, particularly in his dialogue sequences. He has a lot of dialogue sequences with heavyweights like Samuel L. Jackson and Robert Redford, and he's able to hold his own in all of them. So that was great. So kudos to him. I think he'll be playing this role for a very long time. All right, Scarlett Johansson. As many of you know, I was very excited about her in this film. I think she's a phenomenal Black Widow. I think she really sells it. They sexed up her character a lot here, and part of me, at least at the beginning of the movie, was like a little disappointed because she was much more flirty. She had the qualities that I don't like in a female action hero, and they use it a lot in the comics. It's a crutch. She has to flirt, and everything that she seems to say seems to be a flirtation. But I think that they showed, as the movie progressed, that was kind of like her armor. That was her way of protecting herself. I think she likes Captain America. I think that's a little bit of a mistake because I think it detracts from the Winter Soldier, which I'll get to when I discuss, Bucky Barnes. But I think that takes a little bit away from his development. I think Captain America doesn't necessarily need Black Widow, and some could argue maybe they're just friends. But I have to say, she seemed a little too interested in who he was going to date throughout the film. I don't know why he never said, "Why do you care so much, Natasha? Why do you want to hook me, set me up with somebody so much?" Although I did like the excuse for why they should kiss. I thought she was very smart, and that was very clever that she said, public displays of affection make people uncomfortable. I thought that was very clever and a really good example of how this movie explored the difference between spies and soldiers. I thought that was another excellent element on display here. But Scarlett Johansson, very good in her fight sequences. I liked that they showed, they hinted at her past. The fact that it's been, exposed at the end of this movie. People are saying it will be discussed perhaps more in Age of Ultron. And also, I wonder if they're ever going to address, she's supposed to be a little bit of a super soldier herself. Perhaps not on Chris Evans, Captain America's level, but she's supposed to have some kind of serum that makes her a little bit juiced up. And we don't really see that. She still just seems like a really top-notch human operative. But I would love to explore more of her, KGB background. And Scarlett Johansson was really good at hinting at a deeper storyline, even though it really wasn't put on display or discussed too much. And also, I loved that scene where she was popping bubblegum behind Cap when she got the USB drive. I thought that was great. She did a really good job selling it. It's very hard to pull off a flirty character and not make her unlikable when it's particularly a female superhero. Scarlett Johansson, I'm not so pleased she had to walk that fine line, but she walked it very well, and I really liked her character. I thought she was great. She held her own with everybody else, but without dominating, without trying to overshadow everyone else. She was, Cap actually had to save her against the Winter Soldier, and they showed that, even though she's a female fighter, so not quite as strong as her male opponents, she was able to use her brains. Black Widow sting, we saw her, her Black Widow bracelets being used in the opening sequence, and then also that very clever idea of, having the recording, the voice recording. I knew it was a voice recording, but it was really a good reveal and showed that she is a very intelligent field operative, and that's what makes her so dangerous, her intelligence. All right, Nick Fury. I was surprised at how big a role Samuel L. Jackson had in this movie, and he was really good. I also have to say, it's been a while since I've seen Samuel L. Jackson underplay anything, and he underplayed in this film. He didn't go over the top. He wasn't showboating. He had quiet scenes. He had moments of contemplation, and he did a great job. I think this movie reminds you that Samuel L. Jackson is a really good actor, and his work here was phenomenal. He seemed like he was the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he seemed like he was in genuine danger a lot of the time. And I just really, it made me have a much bigger connection with his Nick Fury than I've ever had before. And also, what a gift that car chase sequence was for him. It's such a good car chase sequence when he's surrounded by those police officers and then the Winter Soldier confronts him. I thought that was so well done, and Samuel L. Jackson did a great job, and I think it was almost at the same level as the car chase sequence in The Dark Knight when they're transporting Harvey Dent. I thought that was just really, really well done and really exciting, and I thought that the way they showed the S.H.I.E.L.D. technology working and yet not working, where its shortcomings were, and how Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury was still capable in the field himself, was great. And I just really loved his character, and it was great to see him show what he could do and really be a member of the team instead of just someone they report back to occasionally who stands with a cigar in his mouth. I thought it was interesting he took his eye patch off at the end of the film. I wonder if we're entering a new look, a new look for Nick Fury, because the eye patch is kind of an antiquated idea. Nobody really wears eye patches anymore. So if he can maybe move beyond that, I don't know if he should. I'm not saying he should, but I think it's interesting that maybe he will try it. He'll try out a new look. I kind of liked it, and I'm very interested in the adventures of Nick Fury, especially after this film. All right, next, Anthony Mackie as Falcon. He was really good. And I have to say, what a part of his job was to add comic relief to the film, but I think that Anthony Mackie was really commendable in the fact he never made Sam Wilson a joke. He never made him a caricature. He wasn't there just as the comic relief. He could contribute physically and with also heart. And I love the camaraderie between him and Chris Evans. I think it really was important to show the camaraderie between soldiers. That was another great theme in this film. It reminded me a little bit of aspects of what I think people like so much about Lone Survivor. Of course, Lone Survivor is a very different movie and a much more serious movie. But I think it really speaks to the camaraderie of soldiers and what it's like. Often we only explore the top brass or people who don't want to be there. But to show what it's like, as I said, with Chris Evans, professionals, and what they're like, I think is great. And I thought that using Sam Wilson as a way to explore veterans, and that veterans are no longer just retirees. I think we have a very old idea of veterans of being people in their 60s and 70s. But I think that this movie did a great job of embracing the new status quo, where we have veterans in their 30s and even younger. I believe. Because people are of course, doing tours, and then they come back and they have to readjust to life, and sometimes they have to go back in. I think it talked about that. You never really leave the army. I think that was great, and I thought that the Falcon wings worked well. I wonder if he's going to be utilized in the Avengers. I'm not quite sure at the end of the film when Cap and Sam Wilson decided to go and look for Bucky or something. I'm like, where is this going to happen? Because you're going to have the Avengers 3 happen in the middle here. And I know that Sebastian Stan is signed on for like 9 more films, I believe he said. So I would think that the Winter Soldier would probably show up in the Avengers Age of Ultron, especially after his debut here. So I don't know what they're speaking to. And maybe that's where we'll pick up with the Avengers, where Cap and Sam are kind of on this exploratory mission on their own. But Anthony Mackie, great job. I really liked his performance here, and I think he really did a lot to ground the film. He was kind of our person that we could relate to the most as an audience member. But without trying too hard. He kept his cool. You're never like, stop being a stalker, Sam Wilson. He deserved to be there. Now let's move on to the Winter Soldier. Now you would think I would mention the Winter Soldier third. It is called Captain America: The Winter Soldier. But I thought that Nick Fury and Samuel L. Jackson. I wrote most people's names down as actors, but I thought that Samuel L. Jackson is Nick Fury. But Samuel L. Jackson, Anthony Mackie, I think through their performances, surpassed the impression the Winter Soldier made. The movie doesn't do much to explore the Winter Soldier, and I'm not sure, the character didn't land for me as much as I'd wanted it to. As I mentioned, I went to see this film with my dad. My mother opted out. I'm trying to convince her to go, but my dad, at the end of the movie, my dad was like, wow, that Winter Soldier is cool. So I was like, okay, maybe it's just me. Maybe the Winter Soldier will connect with some people. I'm trying to get him to maybe read some Winter Soldier comics as a result of this. But I thought that, Sebastian Stan, I thought that his action sequences were very good, especially when he had the mask on. That was a very cool character design. The arm looked phenomenal. The arm looked so good. It sounded good. It looked good. It moved good. It was very convincing. It was a great character. I would say almost to some degree reminded me of scenes with like the T-1000 in T2 about a machine a killing machine that just wouldn't stop coming. But I think in terms of the struggle of Bucky Barnes and that, trying to find his identity, to me, Sebastian Stan just didn't sell it. And I still regret that they cast him. I know Sebastian Stan has his fan base, but I think that he sets the character back a little bit, and I wish they'd had somebody else. I mean, it was nice to see the flashback sequences between Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes back in the 1940s, obviously. I still think that they've gotten even better at showing, puny Steve Rogers pre-serum. But still, I just don't think that Sebastian Stan, maybe on the small screen he has enough charisma, but on the big screen, I just don't think he registers the way he needs to sell this character. And I feel bad that he doesn't have Black Widow as his love interest. That's the way that it is in the comics, and I think their relationship, the fact they've trained together, and that they understand a world that maybe Cap doesn't, which I think is discussed, at least with Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, not to loop Bucky into that, to make him just a mindless soldier. In the comics, he had his mind wiped, but then he developed a new history and personality because they didn't keep wiping it all the time. So to rob him of that and make him so much of an automaton is a little bit of a setback, I think, for the character. We'll see where they go with it. I think, the after credit sequence where he's at the, it's so short. I'm mostly just going to discuss that other after credit sequence at the end. But, when you see him at the Smithsonian exhibit, which I thought was very well realized, by the way, maybe he'll start to, gain more momentum and more interest as a person. But right now, he just was that special effect. He was that stunt man. He was that unstoppable machine, which very effectively done. But I think there's more to the Winter Soldier than that. But by the way, Bucky has a lot to atone for. Boy, he killed a lot of people in this movie alone, which I appreciated because that's a big part, as I said, of Bucky's story, having to atone for his considerable sins. So at least they didn't take that away from him. All right, I can't believe she's on here. Colby Smulders as Maria Hill. Much better in this film. I thought she had very little to do in the Avengers. She just seemed to be stuck on there, but I thought she was utilized much better here, especially as an asset to Nick Fury. That's really how Maria Hill was originally introduced, and so I think that it's great to see her going back to her roots and why she worked as a character initially and why people really sparked to her. So she did a great job. Again, I loved having a female action hero who could hold her own but didn't showboat. She did a really nice job with that. She was effective. But a team member. I also thought it was interesting at the end she was applying to Stark Industries. I thought, I don't know if she was supposed to be undercover, but of course Tony Stark knows who she is. So I don't know where they're going to go with that, but I don't know why she had to apply for a job. Do you think she could just be like, hey, Tony Stark, give me a job? But we'll see what happens with that storyline. I wonder if she and Pepper will become good friends. They look like they'd be friends, don't you think? Then next, Frank Grillo is Crossbones. Crossbones never really materialized. It kind of became a running gag about how inferior he was to Captain America throughout the film. He just could not get the better of this guy, and it was really getting to him, obviously. I guess they'll probably explore that further down the line as well. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of groundwork is laid, not just for the Avengers Age of Ultron, but also for Cap 3. So that's very interesting. I'm not quite sure how I feel, by the way, with the Cap 3 versus Batman versus Superman matchup. I'm still not quite sure which direction I would go in. I definitely see both, and I love these Cap films. I'm just not sure how I can't tell yet, obviously, how compelling the Superman versus Batman team-up is going to seem. But this is very strong. So, obviously we see Crossbones all burnt up at the end of the film, and so we'll see what happens with that character. But Frank Grillo, he served his purpose. He was henchman number 1. Also, by the way, henchman number 2, I believe, is from 300 Rise of an Empire, and I think he just got cast in the sequel, Batman vs. Superman, aka Man of Steel 2. They have to be really careful with this. Also, the representative from China was from The Dark Knight, and I kept being like, how'd he get on this council? I guess they're trying, the Marvel and DC are like, well, we're different universes, but as a viewer, I still, when I see that guy, I think Dark Knight, because he was part of such an iconic scene, that Hong Kong, extraction. Frank Grillo served his purpose, which wasn't much, and I think Crossbones is clearly being saved for a later date. Emily Vancamp, also very underutilized. I think, again, seeds have been laid for a Captain America 3. I thought it was interesting she joined the CIA. They didn't address that she was Peggy Carter's relative. I guess maybe that's going to be a surprise later on. But I'm glad, by the way, they didn't keep it a surprise for long that she was an operative. I mean, when Cap was going, thought she was his neighbor. We were all like, no, that's Sharon Carter. She's a SHIELD agent. It reminded me a little bit of the Big Bang Theory, that kind of dynamic with the laundry room and the neighbor. But I thought she did a nice job. She had very few scenes, very little to do. But I think that the few scenes that she did have, she sold. And again, another great female character, a great team player. But, someone definitely being saved for further development. Then Hayley Atwell. I really liked Hayley Atwell a lot, speaking of the Carters. She only had really one scene here, and she had a flashback scene at the Smithsonian but the scene that sold me was when she was, the older characters, and she, forgot who Cap was. That was heartbreaking, and she forgot that he had been there, and had the heartbreak of having him come back all over again. That was really well realized. I thought she did a great job, and the makeup looked phenomenal. I mean, kudos to the special effects team. I guess maybe they got the bad grandpa people to come over there, just like they did Johnny Knoxville, but she looked convincingly like a much older person, and she really did a great job there. And I like the fact that she and Cap were still friends. I thought Cap talked down to her a little bit, like, you're still my best lady. I'm like, come on, Cap, just acknowledge the fact that there's like now a 60 or 50-year age difference between you guys, and it sucks. But at least you still can be friends. So I thought, but Hayley Atwell, phenomenal, sold that one scene the way she needed to, and it made me very curious for the potential TV series they're developing for her. More on that in a moment, but I also want to touch on Robert Redford, which I guess also goes into this whole HYDRA aspect. Robert Redford, the villain, he spilled the beans that he was going to be the villain a long time ago. I don't know how many of you remembered that. I did, so I wasn't like, Robert Redford's evil. I was like, when's Robert Redford going to turn evil? But he did a really good job. I have to say, I wonder if he and Michael Douglas have the same plastic surgeon, because I was all excited and I was trying to build up these movies to my dad, who, by the way, before this movie had come out, had said, I've had enough of these Marvel movies. I don't want to watch any more of them. But they got him back in. So I was trying to say, like, you want to see Ant-Man? And he was like, please, Grace, I just saw this movie, And I was like, oh, but it's got Michael Douglas in it. And my dad lit up, and he was like, seriously? Wow, I love Michael Douglas. So kudos, and that Marvel's smart to cast him for that reason. But I feel Robert Redford has very similar aspects to Michael Douglas. And some people, your moviegoers who aren't quite as versed in, the stars of yesterday might be like, isn't that the same guy? But Redford, he did what he needed to do. He didn't chew the scenery. And he was classic Redford. And I think he added, kind of like the age demographic that was needed for this film. And he weighted it a little bit. I don't know how necessary he was. I don't know why you would sign Robert Redford and then kill him. But, they had this great shot at the end of the movie. A lot of great shots. Very well, set up shots where the helicarrier is crashing in the sky behind. You can see it out the conference room window. And he's just lying there shot. And I wonder if maybe they can bring him back. Maybe they can stick his head in a computer. Who knows? But as for this, I don't know how they're, speaking of this, again, is this the SHIELD TV show they want to do about the founding of SHIELD. I guess that'll be part of the plot, that as HYDRA infiltrates SHIELD. That was a big change from the comics, that HYDRA did succeed in bringing down SHIELD. They kind of like destroyed each other. SHIELD had to commit suicide in order to kill HYDRA, but you can never really kill HYDRA. As Toby Jones says, as Arnim Zola cut off one head to grow back. Gary Shanley being evil was also a surprise, and so was Jasper Sitwell, that other, SHIELD agent, from the television series, and they actually killed him, I believe. I was really surprised. I was like, that poor actor, he's gone. No more Marvel movies for him. That television show seems, Agent Coulson was nowhere to be seen. I think that television show seems to have really been actually a bad stroke of luck for anyone involved in it, because they're not in the movies anymore. But I was surprised at how evil and how inserted HYDRA was into SHIELD. I didn't expect that. And it's interesting to make turn HYDRA from a Nazi organization to more into an Illuminati type of organization. They still felt, in some cases, a little too comic booky to me. This movie seems so real, but then you would have comic book elements like Arnim Zola's computer brain, which seemed to be a little bit MODOK-y. I was like, boy, we are on the road to MODOK, huh? But, that was the only part of the film where I was like, this is getting a little bit out of the realm of reality and into a little bit of craziness. But, I think there's a lot of James Bond elements to Tony Stark, and HYDRA is a very James Bond type villain organization. And it makes me wonder what kind of role HYDRA is going to obviously play in Avengers Age of Ultron. So to have S.H.I.E.L.D. no longer exist, that's the big twist here. That's why this is so important to see before you see Avengers Age of Ultron, because obviously we're going to go into that movie with no S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. can't not exist for long. It's a wonderful organization. I think it's a really great thing to have for these movies. I loved it. I thought it was a great framework here. This movie was everything I wanted the S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series to be, but isn't. So I hope S.H.I.E.L.D. comes back. And I was watching the movie, and I was like, how interesting is it that now everybody knows what S.H.I.E.L.D. is? It's almost like Cyberdyne. It's one of those movie companies that everyone knows now. And it's great as a comic book reader. It kind of feels, like validation to see it become so popular with non-comic book readers as well. So I'm still curious as to how the HYDRA S.H.I.E.L.D. aspect is going to work, how S.H.I.E.L.D. will come back, and how HYDRA is going to continue to be a threat. Now let's go to that after credit sequence. I thought that the character, Thomas Kretschmann, that actor playing him, a little too Nazi-like for my being. With that monocle, I was like, wow, we were going it was like, I don't know what it is with these after credit sequences and crazy characters. The Collector at the end of Thor: The Dark World seemed a little bit too crazy. Again, it's very comic booky when I feel that Marvel to some degree is at war with itself. Like, how comic booky should we go? And I think comic books even today succeed the most when they're the most grounded in reality. So I would like to see a little bit of a costume tweak for that character going forward. But the big reveal, Wanda and Pietro, they looked great. As soon as I saw them, I was like, sold, love them. The twins, the way they were referred to that way, I thought was really well done. Pietro doesn't have the gray hair yet. I wonder, maybe they're going to do that thing where he's like, he's aging, he's going so fast. That's been explored with some speedsters in the comics already, that he's aging because he's moving through time so quickly you just can't see it because it's imperceivable to the eye. It'll be interesting to see if that's what's going on there. And I love that they had Scarlet Witch crazy already. And it just, in that one quick shot where she kind of crushed that blocker, they just kind of like hinted that she did that. It made me go, darn it, I wish that we'd gotten a good Dark Phoenix saga, because I love it when these female characters just go nuts. I think they do it. It's great. And if they can if they can take Elizabeth Olsen as the Scarlet Witch and maybe give us the Dark Phoenix saga that we deserved, Singer, damn you, you bailed on your Dark Phoenix saga. Brett Ratner messed it up. I mean, it was still kind of cool because it's just that cool a storyline. And who knows what's going to happen. Jean Grey is not in the picture anymore in these X-Men movies. But I really liked the way that the twins looked here. And I thought it was interesting that they clearly showed that they had been experimented on. So they are not Inhumans. They are not mutants. And that's how they've gotten around that. I guess maybe they touched them with that stick. I think that's an interesting side effect to come from that scepter from the Avengers. And I was like, you wondered where this was? And you're like, no, I didn't really wonder where it was, actually. And they're like, well, too bad. Here it is again. And as soon as they showed it, the whole audience, you could hear whispers, I think largely of people telling other people, oh, that's the scepter from Avengers, remember? And they're like, oh, yeah. But can't wait. Looks great. So fantastic film. That's my in-depth spoiler review of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Thank you if you watched the entire thing. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll share your own thoughts down below. As you can see clearly, this is a movie there's a lot to discuss, and that's exciting. That's what makes this movie great. And the fact that Marvel has this kind of depth to their cinematic universe that we can have this long. How long is this? Like a half an hour discussion? Just proves that interrelated, interwoven storytelling is the way to go, because it's hard to talk about any other movie to this degree. So watch out, everybody else. Amazing Spider-Man 2, in my opinion, looks like it's going to be this good, and I hope that Star Wars is this good, but the real person who needs to be worried is Warner Brothers, because they're the only studio left that isn't getting, well, Fox also, but I think that clearly Disney Marvel Studios and Sony are really at the forefront of comic book storytelling, and everybody else better catch up, because they're leagues ahead at this point. All right, so thank you, and write your thoughts down below, and you can check out some more episodes right now.